Chant Om 3 times. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Sarvalokanam Vishache Bhavaroginaha, Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha-Gnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Nahi Gnanena Sadrusham Pavitram Iha Vidyate Tatsvayam Yoga Samsiddhim Kalena Atmani Vindati. Krishna and Buddha both are avatars. But Buddha had a very simple approach. Buddha said, life is suffering. When somebody who has got nothing says life is suffering, nobody cares about it. But when a prince of the kingdom says life is suffering, then everybody takes notice. And also everybody felt, yes, this is the elephant in the room nobody is talking about. Then he said, there is a reason for your suffering. There is a state free from suffering, and there is a way out of suffering. And I will show you the way. So it was very simple, very logical. Everybody could relate, everybody got interested because everybody wanted. It was very convincing. That's why Buddhism spread so far and wide, because it was very simple to begin with. Though Gita is the most commented scripture in the world, it didn't make that much impact. It's still not making that much impact. Because Krishna's method is not to convince but to confuse you. When you have a seeker who is intelligent, the way to make him really get into the knowledge is to confuse him. This is called creation of intelligent confusion. When will you get confused? You want to know something. You are trying to know something with all sincerity. You are listening, but you are not getting it. Then you ask, I don't get this. So it means you have listened, you have reflected, you have used your intelligence, and now you are trying to seek. And when you ask clarity, and when the clarity comes to you, then say, oh, this is what it is. That becomes an aha moment in you. Ah, this is what it was. When you get that aha moment, that has become your knowledge. That will never leave you. Until you get to that, it is only a concept for you. It's only a theory. And only when you are confused, you ask a question. Only when you are reflected, you ask a question. What has happened with the Gita? Either people have misunderstood it, or they have left it because they were confused, or they understood it wrongly and took a wrong concept and just passed on the concepts. So, initially when Arjuna said, oh, I'm in such a big mess, I don't know how to get out of it, the first thing Krishna said was, you think you are in a problem, that is the problem. You don't understand the reality. You are stuck in this small material existence, and that is why this is appearing a problem. There is an existence bigger than this. And to understand this, you have to first become a yogi. When people said, I'm struggling, I'm stressed, how do I come out of it? Buddha said, follow my method. But here Arjuna is asking the same question. Krishna is saying, first you become a yogi, then I will give you the method. He says, if you don't become a yogi, then you will not understand what I say. So there's no point giving anything to you. First become a yogi. And then he says, you can either understand existence, then you will see that there is no problem at all. But if you don't have that much maturity, do some action in the right way, and then you can solve it. I will give you the solution. But knowledge is better. So Arjuna says, okay, then I will follow knowledge. He says, yes, knowledge is better, but by nature you are rajasic, so you should do action. Okay, then he speaks all about actions. And then in the actions he says, there is akarma and there is yajna and there is karma. Akarma is better. So Arjuna says, okay, then I will establish in akarma. He says, no, do yajna. Okay, he tells all about yajna. And then he says, when there is no knowledge attached with yajna, it becomes an empty ritual. So you need to go to your guru and get knowledge. And when you get knowledge with faith, then you will get established in it. And then dispassion comes out of you automatically. And now Arjuna is asking, now tell me very clearly, I want the best. And whenever you say something is the best and I want to do it, you ask me to do the second best. Now tell me clearly, what is better? Is akarma better or karma better? And to make things worse, Krishna calls the same thing but different names in different places. One point he calls akarma, in another point he calls the same thing sannyasa, another point he calls same thing vairagya, another point he calls same thing karma sannyasa. So what are you referring to? The same thing which he calls yajna at one point, another point he calls sukarma, another point he calls it karma yoga. So he's testing how alert you are. Are you getting to the concept or just holding on to the words? So Arjuna is asking, tell me what is better. Is action better or inaction better? Is tyaga better or karma better? So Krishna says, yes, akarma is better, but if you are not established in yoga, it is not easy. So that sage who is established in yoga and who can see Brahman everywhere, for him akarma is easy. If you are not in that, then karma is better. But you know what? It's only fools who think akarma and karma are different. They are the same. No, Arjuna says, what do you mean they are the same? You kept on telling this is akarma, this is yajna, this is akarma. Now you are telling this is the same. He says, when you see action and inaction, and inaction and inaction, you will notice that they are not separate. They are there simultaneously. A part of you is acting and a part of you is witnessing. And this is simultaneous. This is not separate. You cannot separate the actor from the action. But your focus could be on the actor or on the action. That is the only thing. You can either be doing something as a doer or you can be doing something as a witness. But the action will continue. So they are not two separate things. It's only the state from which you are doing one or the other. So karma yoga and karma sannyasa are the same. If you are doing it thinking everything belongs to Brahman and acting, then it becomes karma yoga. If you are thinking that I am just a nimitta, Brahman is acting through me, it is karma sannyasa. So it is akarma when you are seeing it happening. It is yoga when you are doing it as a yajna. So he says both are the same. There is no difference between karma and akarma. There is a story from the Bhagavatam. Radha once makes something very nice, cooks something very nice, and feels like I should go and give it to Krishna. So Krishna is somewhere, so she comes there and shares the food. So Krishna says, oh, very nice food, he eats well. But then, when you love somebody, you bring a lot more. If they ask for little, you think they can eat. So she has brought 3-4 dabbas of food. And how much he has eaten all that he can eat. And said, this is too much, I can't eat everything. And then she sees there is Yamuna there. On the other side of Yamuna, there is a rishi meditating. And he says, why don't you go and give it to the rishi as well, who is there? She says, okay. But then this Yamuna is there in the middle. How do I cross the Yamuna? So Krishna says, go to Yamuna and says, if Krishna is a Bala Brahmachari, give me the way. And she looks at him and says, what are you talking? No, go. So Yamuna goes, Radha goes to Yamuna and she says, if Krishna is a Bala Brahmachari, give me the way. So Yamuna opens up. So she walks and goes there. The rishi is there. She says, you have made some nice food. I don't know whether you got any bhiksha today or not. Please have it. And he hasn't. So, oh, this is the best food I've eaten for so many years. And he enjoys it. He burps as well. I'm contented today. She is also happy. Now she has to go back. She says, how do I go back now? Because again the river is there. She asks the rishi, how do I go back now? Because my house is on the other side. He says, go and tell Yamuna, if this rishi is a Nitya Upavasi, give me the way. So she goes and tells Yamuna. Yamuna again gives the way. So she walks. So she comes to Krishna with this Arjuna's look. What is happening here? You say you are a Bala Brahmachari and Yamuna gives the way. And he has just eaten what I have given. And he says, I am a Nitya Upavasi, give the way. What is happening? So Krishna says, what you see is not what is happening. Though I am with all of you, I am not with any of you. I am with all of you because you love me being with all of you. So I behave as if I am so dependent on you all that without you my life will become very dry. Because that gives you joy. The same way that Rishi has got no use for the food you gave him. He has not been eating for so many days. He just ate to make you happy. So even though he is eating, he is not eating. Even though I am doing all this, I am not doing. This is action in action, in action in action. You don't withdraw from the world doing nothing. You don't withdraw from your actions, but in all your actions you see that you are just a nimitta. You are just an excuse for the action to be completed, because that action is needed at that point in time. So Krishna says, once you are got this point, that action and inaction cannot be separated. What can be separated is your focus on what you are doing in each action. Action cannot be stopped. The nature is dynamic. Actions are happening. You can either get involved and do it as an actor, or you can stay back and do it as an observer. The only difference is where you are standing when the action happens. So when you did your homework, I don't know how many of you did it, put your karma, yagya and karma, they are all the same. When these are happening, where you are is what makes them into different categories. That's all. Are you getting this? This is very important. And the more you meditate, this becomes even more concrete experience for you. So he says it's difficult to attain this without being established in yoga. That is why I am telling you, now get into yoga, act. As you slowly act, and you act with the knowledge behind you that everything belongs to Brahman, then slowly dispassion comes to you. When you go back to chapter 4, what did he said? You have to become a yogi. How to become a yogi? You have to withdraw from the senses. When you withdraw from the world, what happens? The duality ceases. When the duality ceases, you are in equanimity, which means you are in samadhi. When you are in samadhi, viveka awakens in you. Viveka is the ability to see what is action, what is inaction. What is temporary, what is permanent. The witness is constant, the doer is changing. So when this viveka comes, then vairagya comes next. Dispassion also comes. And when dispassion comes, then you are already in a karma. So now you get established in yoga. When you get established in yoga, the knowledge comes, the viveka comes. Through viveka, the vairagya, the akarma also starts happening in you. And then he says a few things about few qualities, how this person will be. When you get this point of action and inaction, when you are established in yoga, when the viveka is awakened in you, then what happens, he says, yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate. So once you are established in yoga, your inner faculties are purified. Your antahkarana, what they call. Your mind, memory, ego and intellect, these become purified. And then you are able to have a say over your senses as well. The sense pleasures no longer attract you. You are no longer tempted, pulled by them. When that happens, Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kurvanna Pinalap, you get engaged in all sorts of actions, still none of the actions will touch you. Remember that story. Krishna does every action, but he says, none of this will touch me. So even though you are involved in all sorts of actions, no action will touch you when you are established in yoga. Yogastha kuru karmani. When you are doing actions established in yoga. Kaye namanasa buddhya kevalairindriyairapi yoginah karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva shuddhaye. So the yogi, whenever he engages in action, that action engagement is also for purification. See, yajna has three purposes. Yajna purifies you. Yajna gives a direction to your rajas. Yajna brings good karma. Okay? Now, what does akarma do? Akarma does not bring any karma, does not associate with any karma at all, because there is no doer at all. So Krishna is saying both are the same. Through akarma or through yajna, all you are trying to is to get liberated. What is liberation? Liberation is freedom from karma is liberation. Karma is the only bondage in your life. So when you are freed from karma, you are liberated. How does the freedom come? Through akarma or yajna. So when both are taking to the same point, how are they different? That is what he is saying. So here he says the yogi is not interested in action, but he does action only for purification, only to purify the faculties. So whether he engages with his senses or body or mind or intellect, they are not to attain anything, they are only to purify. So what is engaging your senses to purify? How do you engage? Yeah. So when you have attentiveness about your food and about your company, you purify your senses. All the impurities that come in your senses is because of these two things, the food and company. You are not hungry, you are okay. You go to somebody's house, they say, have this. You say, I just had a little bit, that's okay, nothing will happen, have it. So your resolve slowly dissolves, especially if they give something which you like. It's okay, maybe it's a little bit, one bite, nothing will happen. And that one bite is never one bite. So, and then you say, oh, I've eaten some sweet, have you got some mixture with you? Just for the taste, just to complete it. And then, can I have a filter coffee? Do you see? So, now here you have made your senses impure. So, when he engages in senses, he is very clear about what is the food he eats, what is the company he keeps. By that you purify your senses. How do you purify your body? Once again, right food, exercise, pranayama and asanas. Asanas especially. Your physical activity and asanas will purify the body. So if at all his action he does, he involves in physical activity, which is also seva, and asanas. And what are the actions that purify the mind? Your pranayama, your meditation, that purifies the mind. That puts the mind to the background. And what purifies the intellect? Knowledge. Seeking knowledge, listening to knowledge, reflecting on knowledge, purifies the intellect. So he says, what does a yogi do? Yogi gets involved in actions, and the actions which he gets involved either through senses, mind, intellect or the body are also only to purify, not to get anything. So his engagement in yajna is not for prosperity but for purification. Yajna brings prosperity. That is why people do yajna. All yajnas, are to bring some prosperity. So this is how a worldly person looks at it. I want to do yajna because I want this prosperity. How does a jnani look at it? I have prosperity, I will engage it in yajna. Do Do you see the difference? I am not doing it to get something. I have something, I will utilize it in yajna. I have a body, I will use it to do some seva. I have got intellect, I will use it to attain knowledge. I have got a mind, I will use it to subdue the desires. I am not doing a yajna to fulfill my desires. Do you see? This is the difference, he says. Once you become a yogi, when you get established in yoga, even the actions you get engaged in, they are only for purification. Because all it is, as you keep on purifying your inner faculties, in the advanced course they say, just keep polishing this region. When you polish and polish and polish and polish, what happens? These levels we are talking about, you start moving up on your own. Because they are anyway there. It is just this heaviness which is covering them. So you come up, just by purifying yourself, purifying. That is why yajna is symbolized by fire. Fire is also called as pavaka. Pavaka means a purifier, one which dissolves everything. So he says, he involves in this for purification. Tat buddhyastadaatmanas tad nishtastat parayanah gacchantya punaravrittim gnana nirdhuta kalmashaha. And when you are in that state that everything is Brahman, then there is no impurity. There is no dear one, there is no non-dear one. There is no somebody whom you love or somebody whom you hate. There is nothing which you like, which you don't like, because you see Brahman in everything. You see everything is pervaded by the same energy. And then what happens? Whatever you do, tad buddhayas, in your intellect, all your thinking is about Brahman. In your mind, your attention is on Brahman. Tat nishta, your focus is on Brahman. Tat parayana, your action is on Brahman. For some people it may appear this is very impractical, does not look nice to this is a nice theory. How is it possible? I am awake for 16 hours in a day. How many times do I even think about Brahman? Or forget Brahman, whomever I consider as God, as Guru, how many times do I think? Maybe 5 minutes, scattered, 2 seconds here, 10 seconds there. Some days, no, not even 1 second. But how can you have every minute like that? How is it possible? Yeah? This is a doubt, isn't it? How is this possible? Say, for example, you like cricket and tomorrow there is World Cup finals. India are playing. What will be in your intellect? Okay, who will be in the team? Who will win the toss? What will happen? What should be the team combination? What will happen? Okay, so your intellect is there. Your mind is there anyway. It's only about, cricket, or when the election is happening, whatever you can take. Your focus is there, your nishta is there. Your actions are also there. I'll get my friends, we'll get a big screen, we will do this, we'll do that. So you do it anyway. Do you see this? Or you have got a wedding tomorrow in your house. Or you got an exam tomorrow. Or you have got an interview tomorrow. Or somebody is not well, they are having a surgery tomorrow. This is possible, you are doing it. But your focus is different, that's all. But when all this becomes Brahman, when instead of a cricket match, your focus stays on a Brahman, then again all your faculties will follow it as well. Just when you are able to get to that stage where anything you see Brahman. You see a flower, beautiful flower, and you say, look, the divine is here. When you see a child smiling, you say, I can see a glimpse of divine there. When you see a mischief somewhere, you say, look at that, that is Krishna. So when you are able to see that in everything around you, then what happens? Then nirdhuta kalmasha, then there is no scope for you to pick up any impurities. And here kalmasha means karma. You won't get any attached, connected to any karma. And when there is no karma, there is no reason for you to come back into this body. So it says, Gachanti punar na avrittim. So when they go, they don't have to come back because there is no reason to come back. You cleared all your loans. So you don't have to come back. You only come back to clear your loans. But when you have cleared all the loans, then you come back if you want to. You come back by choice but not by chance. Shaknotaiva sodum praksharira vimokshanaat kama krododbhavam vegam sayukta sa sukhi naraha. All pleasures have a beginning and an end. You are sitting watching television. Suddenly this desire comes, oh, if I had to eat that sweet, or you want to drink a cup of tea or something. And then that propels you to go and make that cup of tea. If you don't have a cup of tea, you go to Saravana Bhavan or go somewhere, sit, get the tea, order it, drink it, and finish it. And then that is over. For that small moment of when the first sip went into your mouth, so much action happened. And it happens again in 2 hours down the line. And again. So, when you see that I'm again and again and again and again engaging and doing, spending my prana on something which starts and it finishes off quickly as well. So what is the point? So the yogi becomes disinterested in something that begins but ends quickly also. And all sensory pleasures are like this, isn't it? They begin and they end very quickly. Even if you are very hungry and somebody gives you the best, your most favorite food, it will be the first 2 morsels that go in your mouth that give you pleasure. And after that is just quenching your hunger and then finishing your plate. Isn't it? So the pleasure is very small, very little. But the hankering comes again and again. So he says, one who being in this body becomes aware of this phenomenon, that this joy that I get from the pleasures, from the senses, is very transitory. It is not even short, it is just this much only. And I am putting so much effort onto that. And when I don't attend to it very well, it comes out as lust and anger to disturb me again. And when he engages by not in pleasure but in sadhana, he becomes easily able to break that avegam, that feverishness of lust and anger. One who is able to do that, he is sa yukta, he is the skilled one. And sa sukhi, he is the joyful one. You are skilled when you are able to manage your anger and lust. And you are happy when you are able to do that. Yes, unless you are able to do this, you can never feel joy. So in this life itself, when you are able to see the transitoriness of the pleasures and you are able to engage your time and effort in sadhana, which will help you, then you become a yukta and sukhi. And what is the sadhana? For the first time, Krishna here talks about meditation. He says, sit comfortably, close your eyes, keep your back straight, observe the breath as it moves through your nostrils, keep your attention in between your eyebrows. You heard these instructions, haven't you? So this is what Krishna is saying. One who does this, withdrawing from the world, saying, I want nothing, I do nothing, he will become nothing. As you observe your prana and apana, where the incoming and outgoing breath at your nostrils with your attention in the middle of, in between your eyebrows, sitting with your back straight and shoulders relaxed, with your eyes closed, then you will notice What is that is making feverish you in your life is your fear and your desire. And when fear and desire are there and you are feverish, your breath is unsteady. And when you keep on observing your breath moving in and out, the breath becomes steady and your fear and desire will drop off. When there is no fear and when there is no desire, then you are free. What binds you is your fear and your desire. And you do this, fear and desire will drop off. And when fear and desire are dropped, you are free. Labhante brahma nirvanam rishaya kshina kalmashaha chinnadvaidayatatmana sarvabhuta hiterata. And when you are able to engage in meditation like this, and when you are experienced meditation, what do you see? You see that everything comes from Brahman, goes to Brahman. And everything which is enjoyed is also by Brahman. And this Brahman or divine is Suhrudam, is very friendly, very loving. And where is he? He is in the heart of everybody around me. When this arises in you, that the divine is loving and the divine is in the heart of everybody, then what happens? Immediately, instantly, Brahma Nirvanam Labhate. He not only attains Brahman, he also attains liberation. When this gets established in you that the divine is all loving, he has got no point in punishing somebody or me. He is not a revenge taker. He is very caring and compassionate. And where is he? He is in everything around me, including me. Then what happens? Then you have attained liberation. Then you have become free. This is the state. This is the last shloka of the chapter 5. It says, when this happens to you, that is it. He rests. He relaxes, knowing that that which is the most important I can never lose. It can never be taken away from me. And there is nothing to gain. So there is no desire, there is no fear, and I am relaxed. I am rested. Do you see? So when you watch any of Guruji's videos, sometimes mute everything. Just listen, see his body language. And you will see this state. No desire, no fear, totally relaxed. And that is Brahma Nirvana. You are in Brahma Nirvana. And that space is enough for you. You don't need to listen to the words. If you just see that space, you will get that space. That's why all the advanced course meditations are all done in his voice, because you get that space, the space from which the meditation has come. The instructions are only excuses to keep you here, that's all. But the point is the gap in between your instructions, the words, the space between the words is what is more important. And that is expansion, that is Brahman. So that you don't get bored, you don't get distracted. The mind will come and pull you away. Just to make sure the mind is brought here, there are some instructions here and there. Every time you feel that, oh, there is nothing happening, and you start thinking, the instruction comes and says, hey, stay here. Stay in this space. And that is it. And there is something very important here. We are going to discuss this. And this is a great, great understanding. You need to really get this properly. न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफल संयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते. Whether you are a doer or a non-doer, it's got nothing to do with divine. This is very revolutionary. You need to be really alert to get this. So we have always heard, oh, I am a puppet in the hands of divine. He makes me do it. And here Arjuna, Krishna is saying, whether you do or you don't do, it's got nothing to do with divine. And na karma phala samyogha, the impact of your action is also not got nothing to do with the divine. Swabhavastu pravarta, they are only the product of your own gunas. नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः. The beings who are covered by ignorance, they think like this, that the bad deeds happen by me, good deeds happen by divine. I have got nothing to do, everything is happening through the divine, through me. So this is very important to understand. There is Brahman. You all awake? There is Prakriti. Prakriti is made up of the 5 elements. And Brahman is the source of the 5 elements. The involvement of the Brahman there stops. Because the 5 elements have their own intelligence. Through their own intelligence, they come together in various proportions to give different names and forms. And through their own intelligence, they give rise to gunas. And when you act under the influence of gunas, you create karma. And through that karma, you experience the impact and you create more karmas or more actions, whatever. So the divine is doing nothing for what you are going through. You are doing everything. All the divine has done is kept you away from him through a veil of Maya. As long as you are covered in that veil and you feel all this is real, then you are propagating all that is happening in your life. Your success, failure, good things, bad things, health, disease, everything is your doing. The divine is neither interested nor is influencing it. Are you getting this? Now, when Krishna is leaving his body, Uddhava asks this question to him. He says, I wanted to ask you this for a long time. You knew what's going to happen in the war. Why didn't you stop it? So much destruction, so many orphans. That is, to date in history, that is the biggest war that has ever happened in history. There were 18 million things which were involved in that war. Said 18 Akshauhini, they say. Each Akshauhini is more than 1 million, which includes elephants, horses, people, cavalry, everything. So the destruction that happened in that war is huge, unparalleled destruction. So he asks, you are all compassionate. You could have stopped that destruction from happening. What is the point? So Krishna says, look, though the divine knows everything, the divine does not interfere with the individual karma. That is not my job. My job was to uplift the dharma and to support it, to bring the balance back. What happens as a collateral damage is none of my business. However, there are times when the compassion of the divine overflows, and those times the grace comes in life and the karmas are burnt without your effort. If you leave those occasions, every other time you have to put an effort to burn your karmas. The divine won't do it for you. Because you have created it. You are creating it still. The divine has given you a pathway. He said, withdraw, become yogi, meditate. You don't want to do all this, but you want the divine to take away your karma. That will not happen. If you want your karma to go, you have to engage in what has been prescribed. Otherwise, you have to burn your karma. So that is why these days like Navaratri, like Shivaratri or Ekadasi, these are the days when the spirit is very close to matter. So on those days when you do some important sadhanas, what happens? the divine opens up and the grace flows. And when the grace flows, it's like a flood. It washes away all the karmas. All the sudden enlightenments happen to people because only through grace. Enlightenment is not a product of effort. So there is effort and effortlessness, like action and inaction. To come to the path, you need effort. Once you come on the path, you need to relax. Once you are on the path, is the effortlessness which takes you forward. To come here for this session is effort. You have to arrange things, you have to do this. Once you have come here, there is no effort. If you still sit here and start putting effort, you won't get anything. You just have to relax and try to be in the space. Gurudev gives a very good example. If you have to go from here to somewhere else, you have to go to the railway station, carry your luggage, buy the ticket and get into the train. Only till then is your effort. Once you are sitting in the train, it is now the train's effort. If you get into the train and still carry your luggage, oh, why should the train carry? It's my luggage, I will carry it. Then it is foolishness. You need effort to come to a particular stage. Once you come to a stage, you need to drop all efforts. Only then you will progress. Are you getting this? This is very important. Your effort, your commitment and everything is till you come to that stage where the divine will take over you. Once you come, then you just relax. Then the divine will take over. So when you go and say, oh God, heal my this, heal this, get this to my children, get my health okay, get me prosperity, then you are just, he's not even interested. He's saying, I can't do anything about this. This is not my department. This is your department. You have to do something. So 99% of the prayers is like this. He says, why they are not understanding at all. They are asking something which they only can do. So he says, okay, I will give the application back to you. You do something from your side. When you do everything and still nothing works, then I will do something. That he tells in chapter 11. In chapter 11, Vishwarupa Darshana, that he says, first you become a yogi. You go through the path. Even then, if you have trouble, then call me. I will come and help you. Without doing anything, if you call me, then I won't come and do anything. Because you are not doing your part. You are only asking me for everything. Are you getting this? So, there ends the 5th chapter. 5th chapter is very short, but it's very important chapter. Karma Sannyasa. Karma Sannyasa is an action you do when you are established in silence. You see? An action that comes out of silence is karma sannyasa. When you are acting, but the action is not happening. When without doing anything, you are making everything happen. That is also karma sannyasa. See, this, I don't know whether Krishna spoke in this order or Vyasa arranged it in this order. These 18 chapters, they all have, each one is one step, one step, one step. The first chapter is Vishada, is just distress. It's just problem, which is the default for most people. This problem, that you solve one more comes. You solve one more comes. You solve one more comes. And you're spending all your time being busy solving one after the other. And you identify with it. When there is nothing to do, you say, what to do? You go to your holiday, there also try to do something. That's why in advanced course, you make you do nothing. You said, don't keep your phone aside. Don't even cook, don't even clean. Just sit and rest. Then you see, well, there is a state free from all this doing. And the second chapter is Sankhya. Sankhya means analysis, analytical chemistry. You analyze everything. Why is this problem? Why is that not problem? What is the solution? How to get to the solution? What is the qualification to get a solution? That is Sankhya. So the qualification is to become a yogi. And the options are knowledge or action. Then comes chapter 3, Karma Yoga, where you understand your action and the impact of your action. Then you learn to act in the proper way. Most of the actions we do are wasteful actions, which only tire us. You can withdraw from so many. If somebody says, I'm very busy all the time, there is so many things which you can drop in life, which what you are holding on to. It's like, somebody is hugging the tree tightly and say, tree is not leaving me, tree is not leaving me. You just leave and the tree is fine. So this is Karma Yoga, saying that, look, all that you are experiencing is because of your own actions. And you can only free yourself. So understanding action is Karma Yoga, chapter 3. And in chapter 4, he expounds on the action where there is some knowledge. If you attach your action with knowledge, then the quality of your action improves. Then he says the different types of actions. If you do this action, this will happen. That action, this happens. Without doing any action, getting engaged in action is the best action. So get through that. This Gnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, chapter 4. With the knowledge, you attend to action. See, there is dispassion in the action, in action, in action. And then in chapter 5, he says about Karma Sannyasa. How to attain to dispassion. And then the next chapter is about meditation. Now you're just given a glimpse at the end of this. Next chapter is about meditation. Dhyana Yoga. And the chapter of that is Gnana Vijnana Yoga. Gnana is knowledge of the self. Vijnana is the knowledge of the material world. Science. So it is science and spirituality. Chapter 7 is. So when you immerse in meditation, you get a knowledge of the self as well as intuition about the material world as well. And then the next chapter is Akshara Brahma Yoga. Then you become qualified to understand what is Brahman. Now you know the knowledge of the self, you know the knowledge of the material world. Now you know what is self also. So now you know what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Brahman. And then goes the 9th chapter, Rajaguhya Yoga. Then he tells the royal secret, secret of existence, secret of birth, secret of death, secret of prosperity. So when you see, he's not giving it randomly. So he says, only when you have this, you can understand, you can attain this. And then the next chapter is Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti is when miracles start happening in your life. When you have gone to that step, then miracles happen. Grace will rule your life, not effort. So that is chapter 10 or 11, I think. And then he says about Kshetra, Kshetrajna. Then he starts giving you the difference between actor and the actor, scene and the scenery. He gives more. Then he talks again about the gunas. And then he comes to the Purushottama Yoga in chapter 15. He says, this is me. And you can become like me. And he describes all his own qualities in Purushottama Yoga. And says, I came like this through the 14 chapters. You also come. You can also come. But if you don't follow those 14 steps, you will not come to me. Actually, the entire essence of what the Gita is just the Purushottama Yoga. It's the 15th chapter. And to make you realize, he takes you through all these steps, one step after that. So you come there. And 16, 17, 18 are just some corollaries. After Purushottama Yoga, he says about something Daivi Asura Sampada Yoga. Means, he says, once you become a Purushottama, all prosperity is yours. Anything in the world is yours. You have got unending resource of pleasure, of prosperity, of wealth. Everything comes and falls to you. And if you take it to your head, everything will go away from you as well. It's called Daivi Asuri Sampada. You will become divine, you can also become a Rakshasa. You can lose everything. In chapter 16. Chapter 17 is about Shraddha. It's all about faith and devotion. In chapter 18 is liberation. Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. So this is all very logically placed chapters. So we have done a great job by fulfilling the first 5, which are the basic ones. Anybody who does not do any spiritual practice also can listen to these and start making changes. But from the next chapter, it is only for those who have meditated. Otherwise, it does not make any sense. 5 to 10 is the power of meditation. Okay? So here we finish our first season. Season 1 of Bhagavad Gita. Jai Gurudev.